participated in such a great name, Asian Le Mans. It's just perfect.
This weekend for me, of course, it's always nice to win. I'm definitely not here to make up the numbers.
Coming up in the program, we'll show you highlights of round 2 from the Asian Le Mans Series from Fuji, Japan, with a strong field of entries, plus, for the first time this year, Super GT cars on the grid. We've got a behind-the-scenes look at the KCMG team who won the first race in Korea, and we'll hear from local favourites Tyson Ken Endless, who have 3 entries in the field. We catch up with the Asian Series promoter Mark Thomas and talk to the series fuel partner Total and their involvement with the Asian Le Mans Series, plus much, much more coming up on this show. This is, of course, the second ever Asian Le Mans Series race. The first took place at the brand new Inje circuit in South Korea last month. Let's take a quick look back at what happened. As the clock struck 3, the race started and the heavens opened. The rain was so bad, in fact, that the safety car was out for 8 laps before the cars were allowed to race. But the rain did ease and some exciting midfield battle followed, with the lead changing hands several times. China's KCMG team had 2 veteran drivers, but it was a third, 16-year-old Malaysian Akash Nandi who provided the highlight of the race, showing maturity and composure far beyond his years. Gary Thompson drove the team's final shift and brought the Morgan Nissan car in for a quick splash of fuel near the end, but misjudged the 3-hour mark and ended up winning the race from the pit lane. That left AF Corsair as the first team to pass the checkered flag, as their Ferrari 458 GT3 won the GTC class, but actually claimed second overall behind the stationary KCMG car. Oak Racing had qualified on pole position, but a mixed race, which included 5 pit stops, saw the Morgan Judd car drop to third overall and second in the LMP2 division. Elsewhere, the Tyson Ken Endless team from Japan had a solid weekend, with their Ferrari 458 GTE taking the GTE title and the team also claiming second in the GTC class. All in all, a great start to the Asian Le Mans Racing Series with some fantastic performance in Inje, setting the bar very high for the rest of the season. The Fuji Speedway stands in the foothills of Mount Fuji. It was built in the early 1960s and hosted the first Formula 1 race in Japan in 1976 and 1977. It is 4.563 kilometers in length and has 16 turns and is claimed to have the world's longest main straight. The current lap record is held by Felipe Massa driving a Ferrari in 2008 at 1 minute 18.426. So how do you drive this challenging Fuji Speedway circuit? We joined Formula 1 driver Shinji Nakano to find out.
My name is Shinji Nakano. Here's my flying lap. This is on the straight, going out from the last corner, first to second, third, fourth, and fifth. For this race, we don't have a correct ratio, so unfortunately we cannot use the 6th gear. So we're in 5th at the moment. The speed is around 260 km. And down to the first turn, we take in first gear. G is around 3.5 G going down, and up to second, third, fourth to the center corner. This corner down to third gear, difficult to miss the apex because of the blind corner. And after, this used to be 100R corner. It's the angle of the corner getting deeper and deeper and deeper. It's really difficult. And after that, the hairpin, it's really difficult corner, this one, because of the locking the wheel on the front is easy, so you have to be really careful on the braking. And then from the first gear to second, third, fourth, fifth again, down to the corner here. Braking is really difficult here. First gear again, and then second, third, going uphill in second corner, again the blind corner, very easy to lose the back end because of camber. And first, second, third, and second gear again here, very difficult to see the apex again, easy to lose the back. In the last corner, from third to first gear, easy, very important how fast you can go on the throttle. Second, third, fourth, and fifth. That was the final lap of Fuji Speedway.
It's a bright and sunny race day here at the Fuji Speedway, and the drivers and mechanics looking fairly relaxed ahead of the second round of the Asian Le Mans Racing Series. Let's take a look at how the starting grid lines up for today's race. Kung Fu Cheng, or Frankie as he's known, had the Oak team ahead of the KCMG on the front row, and then came 6 of the Super GT cars. Nearly all Japanese drivers in the Super GT category, except for Bjorn Weidheim from Sweden in the Gainer Mercedes. Richard Lyons and Frank Yu of the Kraft team are the top of the GTC class, starting 11th. The 2 AAI Rastrada cars 91 and 92 both start from 8th row on the grid. The only GTE entry from Taisan starts 17th, while the Taisan GTC car brings up the rear. Well, there is drama right at the start as we take a look from the view of the pole sitter Jeffrey Lee from the Oak Racing team. As the lights go green, he's got the inside line coming down the straights and into the first corner. But Hiroshi Koizumi from the KCMG team is right there with him. A sensational start from Koizumi as he gets it absolutely right and burns away from Lee coming out of the corner. Here's a replay of the start. The grid is made up of 2 LMP2 cars, 7 GTC cars, 1 car in the GTE class, and 10 Super GT cars, all of them Japanese teams, with the organizers including an extra class for this race here in Fuji. Those Super GT cars are very similar to the GTC cars, with the main difference being that they are allowed to run on development tires and not the one-make Michelin tires. And one of the more exciting elements of the Le Mans series is that the cars are competing against each other on course, but of course it is also subdivided into categories, so in effect you have 2 races within one. The LMP2 cars, or Le Mans Prototype 2 that you see passing here, is just one step below the top prototype category, LMP1. And many teams work their way up through the pyramid of endurance racing, with LMP2 used as a springboard to move up to the Le Mans 24 Hours race and the FIA World Endurance Championship. One of the 2 LMP2 cars in the race is Hong Kong's KCMG team. And here is Hiroshi Koizumi powering down one of the longest straights in motor racing anywhere in the world. It is incredible for the fans to see this unique track at the speeds the cars can reach. Right behind Koizumi is Jeffrey Lee from the Oak Racing team, all the way up into 6th gear down this straight before hard braking and down into 1st for the first turn hairpin. These two had an almighty battle in the first part of the race. Taiwan's Jeffrey Lee lost out at the first corner and then saw his Japanese rival build up a 24-second lead in the opening laps. But a huge mistake by Koizumi on lap 8 allowed Lee to pass him. But Koizumi recovered and retook the lead towards the end of lap 13. Both men drove for a little under an hour for their teams, with Lee completing 27 laps to Koizumi's 32. But for his mistake though, Koizumi was the much quicker of the two, with his fastest lap of 1:36.251, more than 3 seconds quicker than Lee's best. The Taisan Ken Endless had 3 entries in the field, a GTC car and this GTE car, and the other is a Super GT car driven here by Japan's Akira Ida. Starting from 17th on the grid, Ida carved his way through the field, passing several GTC cars in the first few laps. But a mistake on lap 6 saw all his good work come undone. There were some fantastic midfield battles in the GTC class throughout the race, and barely a lap went by without a change in positions. Tatsuya Tanigawa, driving for one of the two Team AAI Rastrada cars, was all over the back of Steve Wyatt's Ferrari early on before passing him on lap 2. But Wyatt and Team AF Corsair had the last laugh when Tanigawa had to go in for an unscheduled pit stop just after 8 laps, which dropped him to the back of the field. Meanwhile, Irishman Richard Lyons in Craft Racing's Aston Martin held his position at the start and built up a lead of more than over a minute to his nearest GTC rivals. For those new to endurance racing, GTC stands for Grand Touring Challenge, which is seen as an entry point for many teams into endurance racing. And the cars are close to production models. That's different to GTE, or Grand Touring Endurance, known for being typically sports cars like Ferrari or Porsche. Another car that was moving up through the ranks early on was Massimiliano Weiser in BBT's Lamborghini. He was a beneficiary of Tanigawa's unscheduled pit stop, moving up into 5th in the GTC class after 9 laps, and then up to 4th just 1 lap later after passing Yuya Sakamoto from the Pacific Direction Racing team. Meanwhile, up the front, Jeffrey Lee was struggling in his modern Judd as Hiroshi Koizumi was continuing to push the pace with some very fast laps. Lee's a pretty experienced endurance racer, but appeared to make some mistakes and was clocking some inconsistent lap times. In the Tyson Ken Endless GTE car, Akira Ida had clocked 9 straight laps in the 143s, including his fastest time of the day on lap 17, and went past Massimiliano Weiser and was putting pressure on one of the McLarens. Some debris on the track wasn't making things any easier for the drivers. Ida was continuing to apply pressure, and after overtaking half of the GTC field before making a mistake, dropped him back. He was making his way through the field once again. After moving up following Tanigawa's pit stop, first he picked off Yuya Sakamoto and then Massimiliano Weiser before being all over the back of Steve Wyatt. He eventually took him on the home straight as they completed lap 18 and then started to gain on Yatsu Kikuchi in the other Rastrada McLaren. Ida was posting some very consistent lap times and edging towards Kikuchi. It did look like Ida could have passed Kikuchi, but Kikuchi came in for the racer's first planned pit stop and driving change, with Kikuchi handing over to Maurice Chen in the cockpit. But unfortunately for them, it wasn't a quick change, with more than 3 minutes in the pits, and the car rejoined the field well off the pace. The world-famous annual Le Mans 24 Hours race dates back to 1923 and was founded by the ACO, or Automobile Club de la Coueste, a group of car building and racing enthusiasts that first came together in France more than 100 years ago. Today, there are several different Le Mans series held around the world. In Asia, the managing director is Mark Thomas, and we caught up with Mark at the Fuji round.
If you're in business today, you have to look at Asia as a key growth opportunity. You know, motorsports is there to help market cars and build technology around cars. And again, if you look at where the growth in the automotive sector is happening, most of the growth is being driven from the Asian area. You know, one of the things I always say about the positive of being involved in Le Mans racing, it comes with some very, very positive baggage. And that's decades of development with relationships and partners, obviously the automotive manufacturers, and there's more automotive manufacturers involved, I think, in Le Mans than virtually any other form of motorsports, but also the ancillary partners like fuel partners like Total and Michelin, who both add the experience. So to have such quality global partners who understand the business and the sport in this region, I think is very, very important for us. You know, I think the biggest incentive for teams probably comes around the fact that in life we all have a dream. And if you look at a dream in motorsports, there is not much better pinnacle than aspiring to race in the 24 hours of Le Mans. What the Asian Le Mans series gives them is an opportunity to take their first step into endurance racing. This first year is about establishment and consolidating the series, so then we can take the next step to grow the series next year, bring in more teams and more partners. But I'd say in terms of what we wanted to achieve this year, which is setting the series up, running some good races across a multitude of countries, I think we're well on the way to achieving those goals here.
Now back on track after the unscheduled early pit stop, Tatsuya Tanigawa in his McLaren had been making up some time for Team AAI Rastrada. Tanigawa was driving a longer stint than some of his competitors, and so he picked up a couple of spots as they went into the pits. Ahead of him here is Hiroki Kato, also driving a McLaren, but for the Cars Tokai Dream 28 team in the Super GT class. The faster LMP2 cars were also lapping him, but within his own class, he was doing fine. Naoya Gamu, driving for the Taisan Ken Endless GTC team, was having similar fortunes as the KCMG car laps him here, but he picks up 3 places in a 5-lap period as his rivals pitted early while he kept going. So a third of the way through this 3-hour race, and here's how it looked. KCMG continued to have the edge over Oak Racing at the front. The Taisan GTE car had pulled clear in 3rd place, while the Pacific Directions team had moments ago taken the lead in the GTC division. Meanwhile, in the Japanese Super GT race, Team Mugen had the lead from Gainer and Okinawa IMP racing with Swift in the 10-car field. Back to the racing. Jeffrey Lee had handed over to David Cheng in Oak's Morgan Judd after completing 27 laps. Cheng was immediately lapping faster, but was still struggling to eat into the gap to KCMG ahead of him, which was around 30 seconds once both teams had made their initial driver change. In fact, if anything, the gap was growing. Koizumi had handed off to James Winslow, who had been part of KCMG's victory in the maiden Asian Le Mans Series race in Incheon, South Korea, and was eager for a repeat. After a cautious start, Winslow started to pick up the pace, and at one point, he posted 5 laps in a row that were each quicker than the last. After Maurice Chen had emerged from a lengthy pit stop for the number 92 AAI Rastrada team, things didn't get any better, with Naoya Gamui lapping him here with ease. After Steve Wyatt handed off to Michel Rigolo in the AF Corsa Ferrari, the Italian started putting in some blistering lap times, clocking 7 1:41s in a row, including the best time of the day, which registered at 1:41.675. Still holding the lead in the GTC class though was Irishman Richard Lyons, who swapped places with Frank Yu after completing 34 laps. Yu was briefly down in 2nd after the pit stops, but retook the lead when the Pacific team also came in for their switch.
How was that stint for you?
Yeah, it was really good. At the start it was a little bit difficult because we had the Super GT cars and they've got their own separate race, so I just had to be a little bit careful. But once we got into rhythm, yeah, it was really good, really enjoyable. Yeah, good stuff.
As Richard said there, it certainly makes it harder for these drivers to navigate with an extra 10 Super GT cars out on track. But the flip side is that it becomes even more exciting for the race fans. At the maiden Asian Le Mans Series race in India, there were 8 cars on the grid, so to have 24 Fuji is certainly fantastic. Oh, and a bit of a hairy moment there for Anthony Liu from China's BBT team when his Lamborghini spun and came to a stop in the middle of the track. But he got the car going again, although it looked to be a little off the pace in the following few laps. The BBT team had finished 3rd in Inje, so they were hoping for an improvement here, but this left them back in 4th at the moment. Winslow had managed to extend the lead he'd been given from 30 seconds to around 50, even without pushing too hard, and things were set up very nicely indeed for the KCMG team at the halfway point of the race. The 30-year-old has won several championships in races around the world, so wasn't likely to be phased at this point. David Cheng in the other LMP2 car was also very experienced. He was born in China, but is now based in the US where he competes in the American Le Mans Series. He was eating up the ground to pass Shugoya Mitsuyama here, who had taken over from Akira Ida, but he was still slipping further off the lead. Frank Yu was continuing Richard Lyon's good work, passing one of the Super GT cars here and holding on to a very healthy lead in the GTC class. At the other end of the division, it was now Junsan Chen in the McLaren for AAI Rastrada. But a bad mistake on lap 39 saw him overtaken by Maurice Chen in the other Rastrada car. As we saw earlier, China's KCMG racing team was crowned the overall champion in the first ever Asian Le Mans Series held in Inje, South Korea earlier this year. British driver James Winslow is back, aiming for a 2nd straight win, and he will be joined by fellow Brit Richard Bradley, with veteran Japanese driver Hiroshi Koizumi completing the team. With every win, KCMG gets one step closer to its ultimate goal of becoming the first Chinese team in Formula One.
Initially, I was racing as a driver myself, and then got to a certain point where I knew my career won't progress anymore, so I decided to start my own team. Being an Asian team or Asian myself, being able to participate in such a great name, Asian Le Mans, is just perfect.
My first introduction to Paul was back in 2006, and then I've been watching him very carefully and kept in contact, and then grown into this world-class outfit. And then some opportunities came up for me to jump in the seat and drive with them, which I jumped at, and here we are today.
It's my first time driving this car, but it's really, really good piece of kit. I'm really enjoying it. My dream is to win the 24 hours in Le Mans. So to be involved in this is effectively the beginning of a dream coming true.
The hopes and dreams for this year is Asian Le Mans Championship, get as much points as possible in each round, and hopefully win a ticket for 24 again.
Back to the racing, and Naoya Gamu had worked his Tyson GTC car up from the very back of the grid to 2nd in his class as he handed over to teammate Akihiro Asai after a 53-lap stint.
How has the car been performing?
Car is very good. Yes, very good.
How did you feel in that stint?
So-so.
A longer than usual pit stop had Asai down in 5th, and with plenty of work to do to climb up again through the field. A critical moment was coming at the head of the field as David Cheng in Oaks Morgan Judd was giving it everything before handing over to star driver Frankie Cheng. James Winslow in the leading Morgan Nissan was making the odd mistake, leaving the door open for Oak to catch up. Let's stay on board now with Oak Racing and savor the sound of this fantastic racing machine. What a brilliant sound. In fact, Frankie was at top speed almost straight away with an incredible lap of 135.843, which turned out to be the quickest of the day. And we're riding on board with the number 26 Ken Endless car, and there's a fantastic battle happening right in front of him as we see the cars make their way round the Fuji Speedway. Some great battles both up and down the field. And here we can see Anthony Liu in the orange Lamborghini giving chase. He was a lap down on Richard Yu in the Aston Martin, but was actually lapping faster at this point, though he just could not find a way through. Michel Rugolo, one of AF Corsa's two Italian drivers, had moved his Ferrari from 4th in the class up to 2nd and was closing the gap on Richard Yu ahead of him with every lap. Further down the field, we see a McLaren and a Ferrari locked in an almighty battle as they swap positions 4 times during this middle period. Now, the new man in the number 26 Taisan car, Akihiro Asai, was still in 5th position in the GTC class. But Yu Yokomaku in the Pacific Direction Racing Team's Porsche was making progress, moving first up to 4th and then to 3rd before handing back to his teammate. Back at the front, Frankie Cheng was charging, but James Winslow, already ahead of him, was up to the task, turning in his team's best lap of 136.455. By the time Winslow handed over to Richard Bradley for the final shift, he was more than 2.5 minutes ahead, but that was sliced to about 70 seconds after the handover. Japan's Taisan team had 3 cars in the race, 1 in each of the Super GT, GTE and GTC categories. With the quicker tires, Naoki Yokomizu and Kyosuke Mineo had the Super GT highest up the field, but Shuga Mitsuyama in the GTE class was also going very well. Richard Lyons had given Frank Yu and Kraft a 70-second lead over AF Corse, but at this point, that had been all but wiped out, with Michel Rugolo all over the back of him before making his move as Yu went into the pits, showing there's never a moment's rest for the drivers. As we see the number 92 AAI Restrada here being pushed back into the garage, and it looks like an end to their race weekend. We caught up with Stuart Beaton, their team engineer.
He complained on the radio that he'd lost gears. We tried to reset out on the circuit. He wasn't able to do it out on the circuit. It didn't work, so we had to pit him in, try to get the gears working, and then the steering stopped, so we changed the steering wheel.
Michel Rugolo in AF Corse's Ferrari was actually the GTC class lead for 4 laps due to deferring pit stop strategies to the Kraft team. But when his teammate Andrea Bertoloni came out to replace him, the two teams were separated by just a few hundredths of a second, setting up for a fantastic final hour. This clip illustrates perfectly how Le Mans Series endurance race works, with the different divisions creating mini races within a race. Within just a few seconds, Rugolo in the Ferrari GTC is passed by one of the LMP2 cars and then laps one of the bag markers himself. As far as his own position is concerned, he hasn't moved one bit, but he certainly had cars coming at him from the front and the back. So that has allowed the other AAI Restrada McLaren, number 91, to move up 1 place. But after taking 4th place and just 12 points in Inje, Junsan Cheng, who was the only returning member of the team that raced in South Korea, was still 2 places down on last time out at this point. So with 1 hour still to race, KCMG maintains its lead from Oak in the LMP2 class, with Taisan's GTE car in 3rd and Kraft racing top of the GTC class. Meanwhile, Team Jürgen and Gaynor topped the Super GT race with 8 of the 10 cars still out racing after 2 retirements. Now it goes without saying that these cars don't run on water. Top quality cars need top quality fuel, and Total is the official fuel supplier for the 2013 Asian Le Mans Series. Let's take a quick look at Total's rich history in motorsports and how they help maximize the car's performance.
Well, Total has a very long tradition in motorsports. Maybe you remember victories in the World Rally Championship with Peugeot, with Citroën, Le Mans wins in endurance racing. Total has a very long tradition in motorsports. Well, for Total, it's a fantastic and exciting opportunity to partner up with the Asian Le Mans Series. You know, for us, it's very nice to bring our expertise over here to Asia and to have the possibility to grow together and to extend our partner network. Well, using a Total racing fuel brings you a lot of advantages. On one side, you have the higher performance, and on the other hand, you avoid engine damages. You run cleaner, you run smoother. At the end of the day, you avoid having engines repaired or rebuilt. Wherever we deliver our race fuels on this planet, you can always be sure to get the same spec of fuel, so you are always sure as an engine builder or as a manufacturer, you're always sure to get the same quality in Asia or on any other continent. Well, I think the partnership Total and Asian Le Mans Series is a fantastic opportunity which helps both brands to grow in the Asian market, to grow, to extend their distribution network, to show how highly efficient the products are, what products Total have, and to invite even maybe people to the fantastic races of the Asian Le Mans Series.
Welcome back to the Fuji Speedway as we ride on board with car 26, the Ken Endless team, as they head into the last hour of racing here. It's a 3-hour endurance race, 2 hours down and 1 more to go. At the front of the race, it was still, as we left you last, KCMG leading from Oak in both the LMP2 and the overall categories. Frankie Cheng was blowing past the back markers, as you can see, but Richard Bradley ahead of him was turning the screw, keeping his lap times in the 1:36 range. After briefly taking the GTC class lead on the pit stop strategy, the AF Corsa Ferrari, at this point being driven by the hugely experienced endurance racing driver Italian Andrea Bertoloni, was back in second behind Richard Lyons, who was back in class Aston Martin for his second stint of the day. The other Taisan was closing in on the battle for third in the GTC class between the BBT and Pacific Direction teams, who had twice swapped positions during their respective pit stops but remained close. With one of the McLarens forced to retire early, there were now 6 cars still out there battling for this exciting GTC division. And while the cars looked fairly settled in their current positions, there was still plenty of challenges ahead in the final half hour. We're now back on board with the Aston Martin as he puts in some very solid laps even at this stage of the race. Frankie Cheng in the Morgan Judd here was battling with the AF Corsa Ferrari, and as you can see, it's not quite as simple as just pulling over for the leaders when they lap you, since these cars are all near the front in their own classes and they don't want to yield any more than they have to. It's easy to forget when you're watching from the cockpit in one of these machines that the racetrack is located in an extremely picturesque settings in the foothills of Mount Fuji, about 100 kilometers southwest of Tokyo, and is visible on a clear day, so they tell me. Well, I'll tell you what's visible to Frankie Cheng at the moment right now. That Ferrari right in front of him. Even though there are 2 different classes of race machines, he has finally managed to make his way past the Ferrari and is going on to complete another lap here at the Fuji Speedway. At At this point in the race, Frankie Cheng had closed the gap on the KCMG to under 1 minute. And you can see him here about to go past the 007 car of Kraft. But Richard Bradley must have got the message from his KCMG team and decided to step up the pace. Almost as soon as Frankie closed to within 60 seconds, Bradley put in an incredible 3-lap stint of 1 minute 36.1 laps, including his best of the day, timed at 136.117, to open up some more daylight between him and his closest competitor. Frankie Cheng got a little stuck towards the end of lap 87, and a few laps later came in for a quick pit stop.
I thought that stint was pretty good. You know, the Oak Racing Total team gave me a really good car. Our balance is actually very good for this race. We have a solid race car. You know, it might not be the fastest car out there right now, but it's very stable, very easy to drive, and I think we'll be better on the long haul. Now we just dropped Frankie into the car with fresh tires. I believe that he can make up some time on the KCMG. You know, unfortunately, we're down a little bit right now, but of course the KCMG hasn't pitted yet, so we're waiting to see how the order is after they pit.
The Taisan Ken Endless team had one of the most eventful races of all. Starting from the back of the grid, it had climbed from 7th and last in its class to as high as 2nd, but was at this point back in 5th after their one and only driver change of the day. While most teams have 3 drivers, the driving duties for number 26 were shared between Naoya Gamu and Akihiro Asai, with just 2 drivers registered as is allowed. 8 of the 10 Super GT cars were still on course battling away, meaning there was always another car to negotiate front and back, even if it was from a different category, meaning the drivers couldn't afford to lose concentration even for a moment. Even in this endurance race, it's interesting to see just how relaxed the driving style of this driver is, even though he's been behind the wheel of his car for a couple of hours. Team Mugen's Honda and Gainer's Mercedes were still locked in and an extremely tight battle for the Super GT lead. As we ride on board with the Aston Martin and we see in his rearview mirror the AAI Rastrada, the remaining one there out on track trying desperately to find a way past. Meanwhile, overall race leader Richard Bradley and Team KCMG had eased off the throttle a touch with plenty of space between them and their closest rival, and came in for a little fuel with time for about 10 more laps before the 3-hour finish mark. With the team not wanting obviously to repeat their error from round 1 when they misjudged the clock and won the race from the pit lane. The Taisan Ken Endless team from Japan have 4 entries in the race at Fuji, spread across 3 categories. The team won the GTE class in Korea, as well as a 2nd place finish in the GTC division. If all goes well, Team Taisan Endless are destined for several category wins. We had a chance to catch up with this multi-category team to find out their plans for the season.
We started with the rent-a-car, with the owner. Then, in 1991, I started my own team, Team Taisan, okay, with BMW M3, and this is the world champion Schnitzer car. So we got the champion at the 89. I had a dream that, Le Mans is a motorsports Olympic Games, but everybody wished to go and to the Le Mans. So we got a chance here, and we got a win, and we got the right to entry to Le Mans for 2000.
Starting Asia Le Mans series, so many people coming to join this race. I hope more popular and more coming to Asian team, and together to go to maybe France to run 24 hours.
Of course, we wish to get the right to next year Le Mans.
Mr. Chiba-san is really a friendly person. You know, he looks after all the mechanics and drivers very well, and at the same time he teaches many things. You know, not only the driving, also outside of the driving. You know, which is really important for the Japanese people, especially. Actually, this is my actually almost the first time driving this kind of car, GT car. So I was just I was just a little bit afraid, you know, because no experience. But it's a new challenge for me. It's really, I'm really excited about it. Actually, ambition here for Fuji is just to make a strong team for the future for Chiba-san. Actually, yeah.
And we are back racing around the Fuji Speedway. The number 91 of Team AAI Rastrada had been hampered by that early pit stop on lap 8 after an extremely promising start. They had been struggling to make up for lost time ever since. Marco Seefried in the final stint for the team was still competing, moving past BBT's Lamborghini here, but he had already been lapped. But with points awarded all the way down to 10th in each division, any extra position claimed could prove crucial at the end of the championship. Frankie Cheng in the Morgan Judd was still gamely trying to get that Oak Racing back to the top of the field where they had started. And his beast of a car was preying on Andrea Bertoloni's Ferrari with just a few laps to go. Just check out what happens as they power down the longest home straight in racing. Frankie is going absolutely flat out using the slipstream, and when he pulls out to pass the Italian, the Ferrari maintains pretty good straight line speed and seems to hold him off. But Frankie has the inside line, and as they break into that tight first-hand corner, Frankie is able to get on the brakes much later and make the inside line and take the racing position. What a great demonstration of the differences between the cars out on track. Though they might have the same top-end speed, when it comes to the braking positions, well, that's where it makes all the big difference. It is a very different driving experience in the closed cockpit car, as you can see, but certainly no less challenging. These drivers lose an enormous amount of fluid during their stint, and it adds an extra dimension to endurance racing. All the teams in this series must have at least one Asian driver, with the aim being the promotion of motorsports in this part of the world, and the spoils on offer are incredible. The series winner and runner-up in the GTC class, plus the series winner in the LMP2 class, will gain entry into the big one itself, the 2014 Le Mans 24-hour race, competing in their appropriate classes. It is a tremendous incentive for those teams to compete here, and one of the great things about endurance racing is the established pyramid in the sport, with a clear path for how teams can enter at the bottom and work their way up step by step all the way to the very top. The final driver for the Taisan GTE team was Shinji Nakano, who took over from Shigeya Mitsuyama after 73 laps with the car in 5th overall in the Asian Le Mans classification, behind the 2 LMP2 cars and the 2 GTC cars. Nakano proved to be his team's best driver on the day, and in the final half hour of the race, he posted 5 straight laps timed at 1:42, including a 1:42.697, which was the team's best lap. Oh, and it would have been even better but for this spin on lap 97 with less than 10 minutes of the race remaining. He just overcooked it as he went round the corner. Despite spinning off the car, looks absolutely fine. Perhaps his ego is a bit bruised, but as you can see, he had to wait ages until he was safe to rejoin the track. Fortunately though, this didn't affect his standings in the overall classifications. It capped an eventful race weekend for the Taisan team, which started when the team was given a 50,000 yen fine, roughly about $500 for overtaking in the yellow flag areas during one of the free practice sessions. This sadly was almost the last time we saw the BBT car, with Italian Davide Rizzo driving the orange Lamborghini for 38 laps, but was forced into an agonizing retirement with just a minute or two to go, moving the Taisan number 26 car and the AAI Rastrada number 91 up the standings. 3 hours of racing and drama right up till the very end. Meanwhile, the Pacific Direction Racing team was back to third in the GTC classification after an epic roller coaster of a day. Starting 6th of the 7 GTC cars on the grid and P19 overall, Yuya Sakamoto had the Porsche up to first in the division by the time he pitted and handed over to Yu Yokomaku. Yokomaku emerged in 5th after a lengthy change, but had the car in 3rd by the 2-hour mark. Then came the decision that cost them a 1-lap penalty, with Sakamoto returning to the car for a second stint instead of Akira Mitsutani, the 3rd registered driver. Each driver must complete a minimum of 45 minutes behind the wheel, though fortunately the team's mix-up and penalty didn't actually change their position in the overall standings, and Sakamoto, after dropping to 4th during the second pit stop, moved the car to 3rd by the end of the race. We'll see out the rest of the race on board with Frankie Cheng in the Morgan Judd. After getting the car to within a minute of the lead, he had slipped back a little, and a mistake on lap 103 cost him any chance of victory, barring the retirement of KCMG. No change in the GTC or Super GT leaders in the final part of the race, with Team Kraft consistently maintaining about a 10-second advantage over AF Corse in the final half hour of the GT class, and Team Mugen holding firm over Gainer in the Super GT division by an even slimmer margin by just 7 seconds in the end. So after 3 hours, Richard Bradley takes the checkered flag, making it 2 wins in 2 races for the KCMG team from Hong Kong. The perfect start in this maiden Asian Le Mans Series Championship, and delight for the driver and his mechanics. Well, it certainly has been a very long and tough 3 hours, but that's what endurance racing is all about. Getting to the checkered flag, and Richard Bradley has led his team to their 2nd win this season.
It's unbelievable. First go in prototypes was on Wednesday. We had limited testing and everything, and I don't know, I take it to this car a bit like a fish to water. It's unbelievable, and as I said before in the show, that it's my personal ambition to win the 24 hours and to enter your first ever Le Mans race, and a race such as prestigious as Asian Le Mans Series, and to come out on top is unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
And in the Super GT class, it was Team Mugen who came out on top.
This is fortunately our first win here in Super GT with Le Mans Series, so it was a great feeling. Yes. I think leading now 16-point championship to the behind. So I think 2 more race left, but I think we're gonna be a strong season. So I'm very much look forward to.
After failing to get to the finish line the last time out, Kraft Racing make it across the line in style by winning the GTC class.
It's fantastic. It's been a while since I've had a win, but I just have to thank Frank Yu, Aston Martin, Kraft Racing as well for the opportunity. Without that, you can't do this. But Arnage supplied the car this weekend, so we're really happy for that. But yeah, I'm so over the moon to win.
So confirmation of those results, with KCMG taking the LMP2 and overall victories from Oak Racing, and Team Mugen claiming the Super GT title. Craft Racing, largely thanks to Richard Lyons, won the GTC class, placing 8th overall. AF Corsair placing just behind in 9th with the single GTE entry from Taisan Ken Endless coming in 12th. Pacific Direction in 13th despite a 1-lap penalty, and the Taisan GTC entry in 14th. 4 retirements over the 3 hours, 2 GTC cars and 2 Super GT cars. And this is what makes it all worthwhile. Hiroshi Koizumi, James Winslow and Richard Bradley from the KCMG standing on the top step with their trophies, next to the 3 Oak drivers, and Frankie Cheng in particular there, seeming to give Hiroshi Koizumi a good old soaking. The victorious GTE team, Akira Ida, Shinji Nakano and Shogo Mitsuyama, steering their Ferrari 458 safely around the course. And great for the fans here at Fuji to see the local Taisan team with an all-Japanese lineup take the trophy. Craft, AF Corsair and Pacific Direction placed 1, 2, 3 in the GTC class, and the Corsair boys getting the better of the champagne spray, if not the result on track. And the proceedings completed with the Super GT celebrations. Bjorn Wilhelm on the far left of the picture, the sole non-Japanese driver in the field, with Team Mugen taking the title from Gainer and R&D Sport. It's been a fantastic day of racing, and we'll see you all in Zhuhai, China for round 3.